Welcome back to the channel where we explore, learn, and theorize about the Marvel Universe. Today I'll be breaking down the 5th episode of Loki, so if you haven't watched it yet or you don't want any spoilers, then don't worry. You can watch the first half of the video normally where I'll be talking about a new Killmonger Funko Pop and what it means, She-Hulk breaking the 4th wall, and then I'll let you know when the spoilers are coming. Now let's get started. Yesterday, I unfortunately talked about Richard Donner, who helped direct and produce the original X-Men movies as well as many other popular movies, passing away. But now I have some more really sad news. Most of you probably already heard, but Robert Downey Sr., Robert Downey Jr.'s father, passed away at the age of 85 on Wednesday, July 7th after battling Parkinson's for over 5 years. Next, the Marvel Simpsons episode titled The Good, the Bart, and the Loki is available on Disney Plus now, as well as the Marvel Legends episode for Black Widow, just in case you guys weren't aware. And the Simpsons episode, while short, was pretty funny. But make sure you watch till the very end, because it pretends to end a couple times, but then continues with something else. Moving on, according to Daniel Richtman, it's being reported that Marvel are looking for voice actors to portray CGI characters in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And this is interesting because it could mean that the Quantum City will be explored and could be full of different species who will seemingly be important if they have actual speaking lines. Next, a new Killmonger Funko Pop was revealed from Marvel's What If, and it confirms that Ultron will appear in multiple episodes. We know that one of the episodes will focus on Black Widow and a post-apocalyptic New York, and will be a what if Ultron won scenario. But at least the Ultron Sentries will appear in the Sakaar Iron Man episode as well. It's been revealed that Killmonger will team up with Iron Man in that episode, and that they'll also get chased by Mad Titan Gamora. So it'll be really interesting to see how Ultron fits into this episode. Or what if all of the what if episodes are actually one continuous chronological story that spans all 10 episodes? Like what if it starts with Peggy becoming Captain America instead of Steve Rogers and continues to mess everything up? Iron Man goes to Sakaar instead of the Hulk, Gamora follows in Thanos' footsteps, then the Avengers become evil and fight Doctor Strange, and lastly they become zombies. Now that's probably not how the show will end up being, but it'd be pretty cool in my opinion to see how one little variation can change everything. Next, according to the direct sources, Marvel Studios' She-Hulk series will feature many instances of Jennifer Walters breaking the 4th wall as she does in the comics. Specifically throughout her Disney Plus show, Walters will acknowledge that she's a character within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And while Deadpool is probably the most popular character that breaks the 4th wall, She-Hulk was actually the first character to break the 4th wall over a decade before the Merc with the mouth, although she doesn't do it as often anymore. This next part might be a little spoilery for Black Widow, but after this will be the breakdown for Loki episode 5, so if you don't want any spoilers, then click off the video now. Anyways, it was believed that Red Guardian would die in Black Widow, but apparently that's not the case, as David Harbour has stated a couple times before that he wants to fight Anthony Mackie's Captain America in the future. And it was also confirmed through a new leak for the movie, which I won't bother covering since the movie comes out tomorrow, and it hasn't revealed anything new. And lastly, the 5th episode of Loki just came out, so if you haven't watched it yet or you don't want any spoilers, then click off the video now, as I'll be breaking down the episode and covering all the Easter eggs. So once again, there will be major spoilers ahead for Loki episode 5. I'm warning you, there's gonna be at least one huge spoiler, so go watch the episode first. Okay, now that they're gone, who saw the Thanos copter? That was amazing, and I'm glad that something that outlandish made it into the MCU. And if you blinked, you also missed Throg. Just like in WandaVision where there was the Grim Reaper helmet under the floorboards, and you only saw it as Vision phased downstairs if you pause the episode, this time, as the camera is panning underground, Throg, not a reference to Throg, but Simon Walterson himself, the actual Frog Thor from Earth 97161, was stuck in a jar and couldn't reach Mjolnir, although that hammer looked way too big for him. Like it doesn't matter if he's worthy, it'll be hard to lift, let alone swing or throw that hammer when he's so small. But it seems like the writer who created Throg, Walter Simonson, thought of that as Frog Mjolnir shrinks when puddle gulp, Throg's nickname, picks it up. Oh, and the jar that he was in had a label that said T365, aka Thor Volume 1, issue number 365, which released in March of 1986 and is the first comic that Throg appeared in. Well, technically he first appeared in Thor 364, when Thor's turned into a frog, and he and Puddle Gulp have to deal with some alligators, which is most likely again a reference to the alligator Loki we're seeing, but he officially became Throg in Thor number 365. Anyways, the episode opens with the scene mirroring Loki's defeat at the hand of the Avengers in 2012, but instead with Loki variant standing over him. And in the distance we can see a destroyed Avengers tower, which I've talked about before, but this time we get a closer look. And it doesn't say Avengers or Stark Tower, but instead, it says Kang. And in the comics, there's a point where Tony Stark sells the traditional Avengers Tower to Kang Enterprises, and it's later revealed that Kang, spelled Q-E-N-G, is a front for Kang. But that's not the only reference to Kang the Conqueror we got in this episode, as immediately after we see Alioth the Usurper. Now you guys know that I hate when Marvel takes the easy route with villains, mainly with Cloud Galactus in Rise of the Silver Surfer, and undulating purple blob Dormammu in Doctor Strange. But when they did it in Loki, I wasn't mad at all, because in the comics, Alioth is a giant cloud, so they gave us a comic accurate version. And the few comics that Alioth has appeared in usually have something to do with Kang. So in the MCU, it's very likely that Alioth threatened Kang, but instead of killing him, Kang decided to turn him into his own version of Cerberus that'll forever guard Kang. Next we cut back to Sylvie and Renslayer, where Ravonna explains where Loki was sent to, the end of time, aka the Void. The TVA can't fully erase timelines from existence, so the reset charges send them to the Void, where they're eventually destroyed by Alioth. Sylvie decides to go through the Void to save Loki, and Renslayer says they have a prototype Void spacecraft, however was just a ploy between her and Miss Minutes to buy time for the Minutemen to arrive. Sylvie hides, but instead of fighting them, she prunes herself as she knows no one that gets pruned actually dies. We then cut back to the Lokis who are running away from Alioth. Eventually the Lokis explain what's going on, and that Kid Loki is the ruler of the Void because he's the only Loki to ever kill his version of Thor. And then boom. This episode is probably my favorite so far because of the amount of Easter eggs. I don't know if these were more obvious than in previous episodes or if there were just more of them, but we see a giant yellow jacket helmet, and then we see the Thanos copter and Throg Easter eggs I talked about before. The Lokis then arrive at their hideout and explain their stories. Boastful Loki says that he gathered all the Infinity Stones and defeated both Iron Man and Captain America. But that's obviously a lie, as well as his hammer. It's most likely fake, and he's not really worthy. Old Loki says that he created an illusion so real, everyone including Thanos thought he died, and he lived out his days in solitude until he got too lonely and tried to contact Thor. But before he could, the TVA showed up. Our Loki says that he's gonna defeat Alioth and escape, but that's when he comes face to face with Vote Loki and the rest of the Loki variants, and we find out that Boastful Loki sold them out. None of the other Loki variants play a big role, as we just see them start fighting each other. Classic Loki uses hyper-realistic projections to create copies of the Lokis, and they escape. The episode then transitions back to Sylvie, who wakes up in the Void, but she immediately starts getting chased by Alioth. She tries to run but is about to get decayed when Mobius appears in a pizza car, which reminded me of the Pizza Planet truck from Toy Story. Now I don't know if this was supposed to be a reference, or if I was the only one that saw this, but if it was, that'd be a pretty cool Easter egg, especially since Disney owns Marvel. Anyways, the pair drive away, and we see the Sphinx, which at this point has to be another connection to Kang, or more accurately, Rama Tut, one of the many aliases he's gone under during his time traveling shenanigans. Eventually everyone meets up, and they decide to enchant Alioth instead of killing it. The Lokis leave as they say they'd rather survive, and Mobius returns to the TVA, saying he's gonna burn it down to the ground, referencing his conversation with Loki in the first episode where they said they'd start with the Nightmare Department. We get our last 3 Easter eggs in the forms of a destroyed Dark Aster, the ship Ronan the Accuser used to destroy Xandar for the first time in Guardians of the Galaxy, the head of the Living Tribunal, although it's made out of stone, so hopefully that doesn't mean that he's dead in the MCU yet, or most likely it's just one from a different timeline, and lastly we see a crashed helicarrier. We then see Loki and Sylvie try to enchant Alioth, but they need a distraction, which comes in the form of classic Loki. He returns and protects all of Asgard, showing how powerful he truly is, but he unfortunately dies in the process. Loki and Sylvie are able to enchant Alioth, opening a portal to the end of time, and hopefully Kang's hideout. There are some people speculating that the real villain could be the one who remains, another villain that has ties to the TVA, and given how wrong we were in WandaVision and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I wouldn't be surprised if he really is the villain. But the more I watch the show, the more obvious it becomes, and the more I want Kang to be the big bad that appears in the final episode, especially since we know that he's gonna appear in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Loki's been the best show in the MCU so far, and I'd even take just a 1-second reveal like with Thanos in the Avengers. Just have him turn around, and then we'll see him again in Ant-Man 3, although seeing Loki and Sylvie fight him and force him to run to the future, or to the Quantum Realm City where he'll later fight Ant-Man, would be so much better. But let me know what you guys think about all this. What do you think of the Killmonger What If Funko Pop? Are you glad that She-Hulk will break the 4th wall, or do you think that should only be left for Deadpool? And what did you think of Loki Episode 5? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you'll never miss another video. Thanks for watching, and remember to wash your hands and stay safe.